have gotten 375 videos on mixed media and not talked at all one time about brushes is an enormous oversight, and I apologize. If you're new to my channel, my name's Karen Campbell and I am a mixed media artist. I have both a mixed media and drawing YouTube channels here on YouTube. And today I want to talk about brushes because just like any art supply, having the right brush can really impact your masterpiece that you're working on. It can also break the masterpiece you're working on. And a lot of times people aren't being successful and they think it has something to do with their skill. And when in fact, it's just something as simple as like, they're using the wrong brush. So brushes are really important. They are as important as your substrate. They're as important as the supplies you're using in your project. So we need to talk about this today. Okay. Basically, with mixed media, as you probably know, at least if you're familiar with my way of doing mixed media, I have my hamburger system. And if you're new to that, I have all the hamburger videos here on YouTube. I've also published a book about it. And it's my layering system, that the way that I do almost all of my projects. And that is acrylic paint based. So we need to talk about acrylic brushes first and foremost. However, there's like a ton of ways to do mixed media, tons. And another common way that you can mix your media is making it like watercolor base or using water soluble based materials as your base layer. So anything like watercolor markers, Neocolor 2, watercolor pencils, anything that's water soluble, basically anything that dissolves when you add water that's not acrylic paint. Does that make sense? Also gouache fits into that category as well. There's like a million products on the market that fall under this water soluble category. So those when I'm using those as the basis or I'm interacting with those supplies in my projects, those get a totally different brush dedicated to those. So we're talking two categories of brushes. That would be four. Two categories of brushes. We have acrylics and we have watercolor. I'm just going to say watercolor to keep it short. So in each of those categories, I'm going to introduce you to my favorite expensive and less expensive varieties. And then I just want to demonstrate kind of why I love them so much and why I recommend them. Now, just as a full disclosure, it's not like I've gone out and tested a million brushes. What happens is that through the years, based on the recommendation of artists that I admire, I've gone out and tried those. And if I was happy with it, I've just kept using those ever since. There's also a third category of brushes and materials I do want to talk about, which is gesso. Gesso is the basis for a lot of acrylic or acrylic-based mixed media projects, and gessos really need their own dedicated brushes as well. So I will also show you the different characteristics of my gesso brushes. So gesso, acrylics, and watercolor brushes and why they're so important. And if you don't have access to the brands that I'm talking about today, I want to at least describe to you the characteristics so that you're familiar with what you need to be looking for when you're out at a store, you want to pick up one or try one, you know exactly what to look for. All right, acrylic brushes. These are my go-tos. I have a whole bucket. I actually have not bought a new brush in a few years because I've really quickly figured out what I like, why I like it, and then I've just stuck with those. You need to consider your brushes as something you're investing in because again, it's as equally important as your paper, substrate, as well as whatever medium you're working in. It's equally as important. And if you take care of your brushes, you shouldn't have to buy them often. So it's a little bit of an upfront investment and then you're good to go for years. I have had the same watercolors brushes for years and years. So it is upfront costs, but then you're really good to go. And it really does make a huge impact on your art. For acrylic brushes, actually I'll start with gesso brushes. Gesso brushes get beaten up by the gesso. So you don't want to be ever using your acrylic brushes or your watercolor brushes for your gesso. Gesso, it dries, oh, you can see this. It really does a number on your brushes. So you're gonna pick up an acrylic paintbrush set or one brush for dedicating to just the use of gessos, knowing that it's gonna get beaten up and worn over the years. So what I like to do is I like to pick out flat, very stiff bristled brushes. The very first set I ever bought was a set of plein air brushes. And plein air brushes are like a mile long because the whole point is that you're painting, you're out in the outside and you're looking at your subject and you are shoring up relationships between trees and waterfalls, and you're standing at great length and you're painting like this. So the brushes themselves are like 3 feet long. So, but I knew that I wanted a brush that was very, very stiff, because the powder sweeping off of that, because the gesso will end up making it this way anyways. And I do a lot of dry on or wet on dry blending when I use gesso. So I need this to be super, super dry and super coarse. You can hear it. Put it near my microphone. So you want to be able to grind and blend that gesso into I love to use the gesso on faces and be able to blend that in. I want to use it very, very dry brushing when I'm on my canvas. Okay, so that's super duper important. So I got these in the mail and I swiftly broke off the tips because they were literally 3 feet long. I bought these years ago and they have been fan-flippin-tastic ever since. These are the Almond Filbert Jewel Plein Air Professional brushes. So I have had a hard time finding those since, but I've never regretted that decision. I have a whole set of them and I still use them to this day. So what if you can't find those? I recommend these are very inexpensive. These are Mimic Hog Creative Mark. And the reason I like these is as gesso brushes, they're a little bit soft, but they will they'll get worn down over time. Here's another one. These are Creative Mark as well. And these are super cheap and they're super, super stiff. But again, it allows me to go in and I like to, again, use just a barely amount of gesso and I'm really grinding it into the project. And that's what makes like the perfect amount of gesso when I'm blending in the paint on my faces. So these inexpensive Creative Mark flat, they're called Bright is the name of this flat cut, does a really good job. And I use these and not this filbert shape because this, again, you want a flat and you're grinding it in. These are way too soft. You're trying to blend and it's so springy that it doesn't blend anything. It's just like a hot mess. So coarse, short, bristled brushes that will get destroyed with your gesso, just will keep them dedicated to your gesso. Okay, as far as actually acrylic painting, I do enjoy either one of two cuts. Now you have a ton of brush varieties when you go to the store, right? There's like cat tongue and like long and filbert and bright, and there's like a million, and I really only use 2. This is just my personal preference. Every artist, I'm sure, has their own personal preferences, but these are what I like to use for acrylics. My expensive little babies that I take care for and that I only buy one time, but then make sure that they will last, are these Princeton Art and Brush Company brushes. This is the filbert, and again, the coarser and the stiffer, the better, because when you're blending wet on wet or wet on dry, you need your brush to be able to boss around your paint, especially if you're doing like a heavy body project. You need it to move around, and if your brush is if it's too like weak and too soft, it doesn't move the paint around. The paint will move this around and then you don't get anything accomplished. So I like the stiffest bristled brushes that I can find. And again, I don't use them for my gesso. And when I do gesso, I grab my gesso brush. And I like only these 2 heads. I like my favorite are the Brights, which are like these flat top ones. I usually just call them flats, but they are Brights. Because they keep a nice hard edge. So if you're trying to make a nice, like a squared corner, you can't achieve that with a filbert head because it's curved. You're starting out with a curve, so you'll never get a flat top. I almost never, ever, ever, ever use a round at all. So this is like, it looks worn, but I never use a round. I always use one of these 2. So those are the expensive ones are the Princeton ones, and the cheaper variety that I love that have come in really, really handy. Oh, I already had them out. Are these Pro Strokes by Creative Mark. I've been really impressed by these. These are inexpensive, and the reason I like them is they are stiff, but they also come to a nice clean point at the edge, and that to me is very important. Again, if you want to create a nice crisp line, you can't do that if your brush is looking like this. Okay, so granted that, you know, that's an old brush, but if you see the difference between them, having your brushes be able to keep this nice crisp edge is very important to me, and that coupled with the stiff bristles just does a really good job at creating those nice stiff edges. This is also one of my favorites, this Pro Stroke 101F. You can get just like a multi-pack. These are very inexpensive, but again, see how nice and tapered and flat that edge is? That's huge. These ones I do not care for. These are the Mimic Cog because they're very splayed at the ends, but this would make a great gesso brush. Because again, you want the splayed ends are nice because you get that nice wet on dry blending that I like to do so much for my mixed media faces. When I find something that I like, I tend to just get it in a different sizes depending on the scale. I used to do a lot of murals, so this big fatty, I mean, this is like a $50 brush, but you buy one once, you never buy it again in your whole life. So again, it just depends on what, this would be totally unnecessary if you just like doing art journaling. So they come in a variety of sizes, but again, I used to do a lot of large scale projects, so then you need a lot of large scale brushes. Watercolor brushes are a totally different animal, totally different. And you can spend a small fortune on them as well, which I don't want to see you do, which is why I'm showing you some inexpensive varieties as well. Watercolor depends on the water to carry the pigment across your paper. So the brushes you select will in essence be acting like a sponge. So the more spongy and absorbent your brush bristles are, the easier it is to control, and the greater, you'll just have greater success and ease with your watercolor or water soluble based mixed media projects. So I recommend two kinds. The very expensive kind that I've been using for years are these black velvet silver watercolor brushes. And they are super expensive, and they are used with real animal hair. I think it's squirrel. Don't quote me on that. So because they are so absorbent and they work so well, I've over time collected them in different shaped bristles. The round being the most common. So these are like the opposite of my acrylic brushes. And I also, they come in a lot of fun shapes. So here's like a dagger, which will make anything from thick to super fine thin lines. So I've been collecting these. I also really enjoy working with the flats, which I know is not, I feel like that's not a classic like watercolor tool, but I really enjoy switching up my brushes with watercolor because you really, when you're working with acrylics and you paint with a brush, it can be, you know, it's kind of just smeary and it doesn't make like a very crisp line. Whereas when you're working with watercolor, the line you create is exactly a reflection of the brush that you're using. So you can make really fine lines with like a very fine tip brush, or you can make exactly this thick line using your flat. So these black velvets are amazing because they're so absorbent. And for a long time, I didn't even want to try anything as an alternative because I was so happy with them. However, I felt bad recommending them to my students because they're really expensive and not a lot of people, you know, don't do art as their main job like I do. And so it's more of a hobby and they don't really want to spend as much money, which I totally get. So luckily, thanks to Jerry's Artorama, I have a few sets with them. I have been working with them for the last year or so. They sent me these are faux enamel brushes by Creative Mark. These are fantastic. Fantastic brushes, way cheaper than the black silver. So I'm super happy to be able to recommend a set that does not break the bank in any way. You can get like a whole, I think like a 4-piece set for like $20, whereas the black velvets are probably $20 per brush. And these really are fantastic. And so I've been super pleased. And not only that, but to take this one step further, one thing I noticed was, so say I take the same brush size, was that they're cut very differently. So actually, so see if you can see these brushes, this one is tapered, tapers for a lot longer. Okay, so probably halfway down the brush, you're getting this cut in. Whereas this one is like a true round where it's long and then it's only tapers at the more to the top. So I love, love, love that they're actually create slightly different lines, even though the sizes are the same. And yeah, super, super, super pleasantly surprised by these ones here. So all of these are, I put all the links to these in the description box if you want to go check any of them out, but very happy. And brushes make a huge difference. So I do highly recommend paying attention to the ones that you are using. And if you are experiencing difficulties or having a hard time blending, shading, using paints, I would definitely try switching up your brushes or investing in a more expensive brush and seeing if that makes a difference. And you can just start off by getting one so you don't break the bank and get a whole set, but just try one and see if you can notice a difference for yourself. And I think you might be pleasantly surprised. So thanks for watching. Next week, I'm going to do a fun project with you. So make sure you subscribe and come back to me so we can do a fun project together for Halloween. And I hope you have a great week. I will see you on Monday on my drawing channel when we're doing a 3/4 face. Come draw with me too. All right, bye guys.